the more you take, the more it affects you. For most kids, it's the more synthetic dyes you consume, the worse neurologic effects that you have. But there are kids like Atreyu where, I mean, just a very small amount, it just changes you so dramatically. So there honestly, I'm very curious, like you and like probably many of your listeners, like, why is this happening? But the reality is there's been millions of dollars on these studies, and we know that it causes neurologic effects. So we know that it impacts the population in general in a very negative way. So although a part of me is curious why it's happening, the bigger part of me is like, we know that it's not good for us. We don't need to be consuming it at all. And so our heart would be for, the FDA and the government to ultimately take care of the situation and protect us. So although I do wish we had more studies, I don't necessarily know that it's necessary.
Yeah, and that's what one of the researchers in our documentary, she says that, of course, her and other scientists would love to do more and more studies, but we have enough information now to show that they shouldn't be in food that we're eating. So
yeah. And I have to ask as a side note, the name Atreyu, is it from the Neverending Story or from the post-hardcore band?
It's from the Neverending Story. Yeah, I watched that movie growing up a whole lot. Now I've known who Atreyu the band is for a long time too, but we get that question a lot.
They were much better when they had the previous lead singer. But anyway, I guess looking at it, I think the thing that's interesting is, to me, like you have this experience, you learn a lot from it, you start talking to other people. When you talk to other people, what was the biggest surprise when you started talking to other people about their experience, in putting the documentary together?
So our biggest surprise about their experience. I think what was so shocking to me would be, one, that so many people have had a reaction similar to ours, because initially I kind of felt like I was on an island. And I was kind of, I guess, afraid to share our story because it's so unbelievable. I mean, honestly, Jeremy, if you were to tell me that this was your daughter, I would be like, oh, okay. And then I'd be like, is it really? You know what I mean? It just sounds so unbelievable. I would definitely say the amount of people that this is reacting to, or that this is affecting, is definitely something that has shocked me.
Well, I think that for me, the thing that's been really cool to see and that's been a big shock is just locally in our city. We started this group, and so a big chunk of that group is people in our city, and we've seen like a shift in our local school system. We went to our daughter started a Mother's Morning Out program this year, and like 3 of the kids in the class don't eat dye. And so like we've kind of seen this cool little ripple effect, and we've personally like had experiences where somebody has tagged us in a post on Facebook because they're having issues with their kids, and we're like, you should give eliminating dyes a try. And we've had like people who say that it's changed their lives. It's like that when you go from this point of being like hopeless, you can't figure out what's going on with your kid, and you don't know what the future looks like, and then you're able to eliminate this small little thing out of their diet, and all of a sudden, it just alleviates that pressure. Like it's life-changing for people. And so it's been cool to see that happen multiple times. And it kind of just gives us like, it gives our story validity to see that it's happening to other people. And then to get into this documentary and talk to all these researchers who have been studying this stuff for years, it kind of gives us more concrete that what we're seeing and what has happened in our family is a real thing, and we just want more people to know about it.
And I think you have to wonder as well, like, I guess, how many misdiagnoses are out there? I don't mean from food dye. I mean from like kids that have been diagnosed from other things, and maybe they're on a medication of some sort, or they're on a behavior program, and like it's not improving. And I'm just curious if that's something that in your conversations you guys saw come up a lot, like people that they just could not figure out how to help their kid.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. And I mean, that was personally the path we were going down. Like, we had several referrals from our doctors to go ahead and get an evaluation at 3. And then also from the school that he was previously at, they wanted to start an RTI on him, which is a plan that would follow him from 3 to 12th grade.
For people that don't know what an RTI is, could you just explain?
So an RTI is response to intervention. So that's a plan that you would start. And for him, it would have started at age 3 and it would follow him through 12th grade. So it would be something that each teacher would get, and they would see it would have likely a diagnosis and how to proceed with that child and how to best serve that child. So in a lot of instances, it would have been really helpful. But for us, since we had those days where he was so different and so easy to reason with and just a completely different child, we didn't feel like a diagnosis fit him, especially at 3. Like we had plenty of time to figure that out. And of course, now he has no diagnosis, and that would have been wrong. But anyways, to get into the science, the most authoritative report that we have today in the entire world is the California report. So it's the WEHA. So it's scientists, academicians, toxicologists.
The Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, the WEHA. So
I appreciate that, because I'm like kind of like what does that acronym mean type of guy.
Yeah. So they studied, they put all the studies together, and it's a meta-analysis. So it's the strongest form of research. So
is a meta-analysis like a study of studies? Isn't that what it is?
Basically, yeah.
Okay,
so
cool.
it's even stronger. Yeah. So it's even stronger than just a study on 200 children.
They can bring together the studies like, okay, these don't mesh together, so let's throw that out. These complement each other.
See a correlation and to make sure that it's across the board. And so they actually found that synthetic dyes and ADHD, their symptoms overlap, and that there can be a cause for misdiagnosis. And oftentimes, and even one of the children that we interview, so our film is a science-based, but also a story-driven film. So we do interview several families, and one of the families, their child does have ADHD. But what happens is the ADHD and the dyes kind of compound. And so it worsens things, or the dyes are creating those ADHD type symptoms like it was kind of in our child. He didn't really have the hyperactivity, but like the aggression. That's the diagnosis we were likely looking at. But so what they found is the neurologic effects that are happening in children that they're seeing from all those studies and from this meta-analysis include hyperactivity, inattentiveness, restlessness, and sleeplessness, irritability, and aggression. So, if you have a child that has those symptoms, you would assume, they might have ODD, they might have ADHD and even autism. But also what we're seeing is that, so you have like maybe a true diagnosis here, and then you put on the dyes, it's just making it so much worse. And so for families, the aggression and the attentiveness and the sleeplessness, like that's causing so many more issues. So it really helps families get to the root of the cause once you remove the dyes if your child is reactive.
And what's crazy is a big portion of the medications for these diagnoses also have dyes in them. So it's like, you're adding on top of the issue.